Tom Clark.
He used to be the G6 sergeant major.
Oh, yeah, okay. So he used to be down here, though.
Yeah.
No, but he was the CSO of the city.
I think so. Maybe it was here. I don't know.
What was the last name?
Clark.
Yeah, I think so. I know the name.
So he was like regional director or something for AFCEA or something like that. To collect lunch tickets. And Jim and I didn't have lunch tickets. I was like, well, somebody's sitting on right here because they were the day before. And I looked and like, there's nobody at the table.
Right.
Tom walks up and he like drops his tickets on. Oh, I'm sorry. He's like, okay. Yeah, are we on time? I think I'm gonna recharge my coffee and I got 15, 14 minutes.
Well, I think they're talking about the registration desk there.
Okay, that makes sense.
Any questions?
Got it.
Not terrible.
Got it. Get to know area.
All good, man. We need ambassadors. Said we need ambassadors. I'm making notes. I don't know why, because I'm just gonna wing it anyway. I didn't know they were recording me. I don't like that. I don't like that at all.
They shouldn't have said it.
All right, so maybe I'll be back in an hour.
No, I need this for last it is good, good. Let's try that. Make sure my hearing aids adjusted.
Okay, well, good morning, everybody. My name is Scott Henry. I'm with the headquarters DA Army Cio G6 staff, specifically in the Cybersecurity Directorate, and then within the ComSec and Key Management branch. I'm the Cryptographic Modernization lead, ComSec lead for the Cio G6. And, is anybody familiar with ComSec Mod? Raise your hands. Is it a new topic? Kind of giving an idea like how far to dig. So far this week, this has been a very rewarding experience as far as getting the opportunity to listen to our senior leaders talk. General Funk, Mr. Garcia, is my deputy, General Crawford's deputy, I should say, my deputy, and then my director, Ms. Schreiber, sat on the women's panel yesterday. Unfortunately, she had to leave yesterday. So, and also General Yee sat on the panel. General Yee used to be our cybersecurity director and is within our directorate, and he moved on to DISA. So, a little bit about myself. Again, my name is Scott Henry. Actually, a retired Army officer. Retired in 2006 as a signal officer. I did 11 and a half years listed as an infantryman, and then 10 years as a signal officer. My battle buddy is actually here in the room at the back by the door. He has the training with industry program. We were actually commanders together back in the day, so it's been old home week for me. I've actually had an opportunity to see 4 or 5 folks that I commanded with. I rarely see folks I served with on active duty today because time changes things. So it's been actually a good time, and hopefully that I'm actually surprised at how many folks are here. So that's a good thing because I need as many ambassadors as we can get to go out and spread the word on crypto mod and its importance. So without further ado, we'll move on. The agenda that we're going to cover today, I'm going to talk briefly about some of the missions and functions of the Cio G6. The key organizations that are involved in the within the arena of cryptographic modernization and ComSec in general. And ComSec also includes key management, so we'll talk a little bit about that towards the end. The policy and guidance, from an overall perspective. But I want to go back to the key organizations. This is a collaborative effort. It's a team sport. It's not one organization. It's a whole myriad of folks that have to work together to pull this off and make things happen. We're going to talk about the Information System Security Program from a high level and a DoD level, and then we're going to break it down into the Army's implementation of that. Give you an overview of CryptoMod, talk about a little bit about what it is, what it means, the Advanced Cryptographic Capability Program, or ACC, and then CryptoMod 2, and as I mentioned, we'll close out with a little bit of discussion about key management. So this is our one over the world slide. And I think you've heard this quote this week. I believe Mr. Garcia mentioned it, that success no longer goes to the country that develops a new technology first, but rather to the one that better integrates and adapts it in its way of fighting. So that's out of the National Defense Strategy. And the reason I show this slide is because you have to show how you support all these efforts, right? So ComSec is involved in all these LOEs. When you break it down, you start at the left with LOE 1. The modernize the network, that falls under the network CFT. Well, we're an enabler to modernizing the network. You have to have the ability to secure that information and data. Shaping the force, as you go through and you look at the formations, that drives, how much capability is required within those echelons. So, that we play a part in that because every formation is going to have some form or shape of ComSec capability. Reform process and policies is a big one. As we move forward, we're seeing a lot of change in the ComSec arena. And we're going to talk a little bit about commercial solutions for classified. So, that is a shift in culture and mindset from our traditional Type 1 or Suite A. Type 1 has been stricken from the IA glossary as an official term, so it's Suite A now. The LOE 4, lifecycle sustainment. how do we sustain these capabilities? And ComSec is kind of a non-traditional program. So when you think acquisition programs, you typically think, I'll give an example of PM radars. I work there. So, you have a G8, G3 fielding schedule patch chart. You buy and acquire a product, and you field it in accordance with your patch chart. ComSec works that way when it's an acquisition program, such as, WinT, which, or probably a bad example, but you get the idea. However, there's often times when capabilities are required because of expansion of the network, growth of the network, more capability is required, and that's not within an acquisition program. So how do you capture those requirements? It's more of a pull rather than a fielding schedule or push. And then LOE5, security and survivability, we obviously play a role in there. And if you look across the bottom, you're going to see, a lot of the capabilities that our leaders discussed this week, such as cloud and AI. How do we incorporate crypto into those areas or those capability areas? Interoperability is a big one. As we look across our the future fight without, we don't fight alone anymore. How do we interoperate? And here's a classic example from a tactical radio perspective. When every country is going to bring their host nation radio, and we have to interoperate with them. Radios, they weren't designed to work that way. So, that's a big challenge. And we've been working through some of those things. Okay. Our ComSec branch. I mentioned I'm in the ComSec branch, and that falls, key management and ComSec both fall in that branch. Obviously, we're here to talk about cryptographic modernization, so that's a big one. But obsolescence is a huge piece of that. So we've identified roughly 104 or so devices, that need to come out. They're legacy devices that need to be removed from the field. So that's a huge divestiture effort that we're working with Toby Hanna. I think currently we have about a third of those working through the Total Equipment Management Strategy Forum under AFCEA to get removed from MTO's TDAs and get them out. We're in the process of working the remainder, but in the TEMS or the Total Equipment Management Strategy, that's all equipment. So ComSec's not even a drop in the bucket. You're competing with trucks, you're competing with MKTs, whatever, all equipment types. So, and as I mentioned, that's a AMC forum, a 4-star, ultimately a 4-star GOSC forum. The Communication Security Information Systems program, security program. I have another slide that goes into detail, so we'll move on. We'll move beyond that. One of the other areas we focus is the National Leadership Command Capabilities, NLCC. So, if you think, presidential secure voice conferencing, for instance, you think, the nuclear arena and that whole secure conferencing dialogue that has to occur between the senior leaders of the nation. That's what the NLCC umbrella covers all those networks. Probably close to 3 dozen different networks that provide those capabilities. So we play an integral part in making sure that those networks and systems are secure. Key management infrastructure capabilities. Towards the end, we'll discuss KMI. We recently transitioned from the old electronic key management system or Army key management system to key management infrastructure. There's a belief that because we've transitioned all of our accounts, and I'll use the term computers, right? That's easy to understand. So we put the new computers in the account. Oh, we're done. We're nowhere close to being done. We'll talk a little bit about that. And key extension requests. So, key extension requests are just, as we explain what CryptoMod is, if you have a requirement to continue to use a cryptographic capability beyond its key date, there's a process, and we'll go into a little bit of discussion about, how you can pursue that if it's necessary. Key organizations. So obviously at the headquarters, Cio G6 is heavily involved in in the cryptographic modernization arena. We also have TRADOC, and I neglected to put Army Features Command on here because I'm not sure if you're aware, but the TRADOC capability managers have transitioned under Army Features Command. So they play and also C5ISR has transitioned under Army Features Command. So all of our service labs have moved under Army Features Command. PDO-C3T, they play a big role. They're actually the acquisition program for ComSec. So, they're the ones that buy all of our ComSec gear based on the requirements that are submitted. They also work with the programs of record, through a data interchanges to make sure that they've got the crypto on hand to support those PMs, the various PM fielding schedules, and that is Program Management Office Network Enablers. So they have ComSec and they have half a dozen other programs that fall under PLNID. Also a big player is the Communication Security Logistics Activity located at Fort Huachuca. So this, as the name implies, they do all of our logistics support. They workload Tobyhanna Army Depot. They have all the item managers. So when you go in and request a KD-175 golf, the item manager at CSLA will ultimately be the one that processes and fields that request. And also at CSLA, they have our Tier 1, which we'll talk about key management towards the end. But our Tier 1 for KMI, which is our Army Central Office of Record for all of your key material. So NSA is Tier 0. Tier 1 is Army at Fort Huachuca and Air Force at San Antonio. Okay, I have a couple boring slides here. So, everything is governed by policy, doctrine, etc. So we're going to talk briefly about policy and guidance. These are the various ARs that primarily cover, ComSec from a crypto mod perspective. So you have AR25-1, AR25-2. The big one is AR25-2, and the associated pamphlet, which I neglected to put on the slide, 25-2-16. It's DACAM 25-2-16, which is communication security. It used to be AR25-2 was about that thick, so based on guidance from above, it was being that the only things that go in, the Army regulations are those things that are, regulatory in nature, and all your how-to stuff needs to go in a pamphlet. So we took the big AR and we reduced it to this big, and we have 18 pamphlets that are associated with it. So, so now you don't have to look. You can go to your pamphlet to find out exactly what you need. And I think the thought process there was it's easier to update a pamphlet than the regulation. So again, 25-2-16 is a DACAM that covers communication security. 3840, G2 is a proponent that's for safeguarding and controlling communication security material. We actually have a joint effort between the G6 and the G2 to explore, proponency roles for ComSec, and some things will move back over to the G6, I believe, ultimately, and the traditional G2 oversight will stay with G2. So that issue is being worked, and from a policy perspective, that'll probably take a while, but we're working on it, and I think that we're going to get there before too long. And TB 380-41, that's your procedure for safeguarding accounting, and that's your key material for ComSec. Okay, these are a couple of the big ones that when we talk about crypto mod drivers, these are Chairman Joint Chiefs of Staff notice and instruction 6510. The first one, cryptographic modernization planning, is that's an FOU document, but that just kind of gives a broad overview of crypto mod in a general sense.
But the foot stomp here, that's the one that you're going to look at if you have to do a key extension request. It'll have the flow chart and the process for going through and submitting that. And ultimately, your key extension request basically is a POAM, plan of action milestones that includes your schedule, your funding, your rationale why you can't make the date, and it goes to the Joint Staff Cryptographic Security Panel for staffing, and they will forward it to the MC4EB for ultimate approval or denial. The second one, the Notice 6510, that's the one where you're going to get all the meat, and that's a classified document, but it's going to give you the stoplight charts. So you're going to see, based on algorithms, when certain equipments or capabilities are no longer certified for use by NSA. Initially, when we started down this path, there was algorithm IPT, and we would look at algorithm XYZ and all the equipment associated with it, and we would determine what would be an appropriate last year of use based on NSA's recommendations. They have a way of determining that based on the intelligence value of the information, how long it has to be protected, etc. But the initial decertification memorandums from NSA were based on equipment. So you can see how that could get rather cumbersome and a lot of work relatively quickly, because if you're going to take every individual device and try to decertify it. So instead, they look at it from an algorithm perspective, and all the equipment that contain certain algorithms, they went through and changed the direction, and they decertify the algorithm, and then we attempt to identify in the decertification memoranda, all the equipment types that are associated with that. That's not an easy task, because contrary to popular belief, there's no Oz man behind the curtain that has a database that contains all that. The CACMB at NSA kind of has most of it, but it's not a complete list. So there was a lot of work that was done by the algorithm IPT to make that happen. And the point I was making is, 6510 is the Chairman Joint Chiefs of Staff notice, but it's really fed by about 34 decertification memorandums that are available on NSA's sister site, that feed in and kind of shape that document. Okay, another document is the Army Communication Security Modernization Implementation Planning Guidance. Wow, that's a big name. We used to call it the Cryptographic strategy, but you can't use strategy because there's only an Army strategy. So we developed the planning guidance. General Crawford signed this one in December of 2017. We actually have an update to this document in staffing now. We just completed 1 2-star staffing. We're adjudicating those comments, and our goal is to have the revision done and signed by the end of the fiscal year, so that we can pick it out to the field. And it's available on the ISSP website, which we'll have that later in the slides. Okay, I talked about the ISSP several times. So from an overall perspective, the ISSP is it's a DoD program, top level. Each of the services implements, the ISSP slightly different, however their service identified to implement it. It's required by public law and NDAAs. The way the Army is implemented is with the ISSP application. And essentially what that means is that, that is a method in which we can track, our IT requirements and our crypto requirements, IA training, IA tools. So it's not just ComSec that gets ordered under under this particular application. The other side, we track all of our IA certifications, IA tools, IA training. Okay. So we have a forum at the staff that meets every week between the G357, the G6, and the G8. And in that forum, we staff all the requirements that come in for ComSec equipment. This is kind of separate when you traditionally look at how the log system works, right? So we're all familiar with the log system. If I'm missing something, I need a replacement X, Y, Z. So I go to my supply order and I submit a requisition. Hey, I'm short. I have an authorization. So that's kind of an easy process. But what happens when you need something and you don't have an authorization? You submit the requisition in the supply system. I was a signal commander, right? So what happens if I go in and say, I'd like to have a tank? And it's going to be all. That's a kind of an extreme example, but it's automatically rejected, right? So early on, I talked about how ComSec, if it's not part of a traditional program of record, then it's kind of a pool. You got to submit your requests. Oftentimes, probably about 60% of the requests we get are above authorization. So if you went through the traditional log system to request that, it would be an automatic rejection. So we have the ISIP, and we use the ISIP in that forum with the G3, the 6, and the 8 to monitor those and review those requests so that we make sure that you get the fields get the capability that are required when they're required, as opposed to submitting it in the log system and taking if you go to use offenders and want to update your MCO or PDA, it's going to take 2+ years, and you can't wait that long to get this capability. So I think I said enough about the ISIP. Okay, crypto mod. So before I proceed, any questions? We can have interaction here. No? Come on.
You guys are too easy. Let me check my time. I'm getting the spin time, so okay. We're good? All right. I got to keep them straight.
All right, crypto modernization. What is it? Okay, it's benchmark. Essentially, it's how we're going to proceed. It's acknowledging that our legacy crypto devices are no longer capable of providing protection they once were. I'm sure everybody here is familiar with Moore's Law. It's a simple concept. We think about it when we do our, with our IT infrastructure. It's like, hey, we got to turn this. Every 18 months, technology is changing. But for some reason, we think, well, NSA gave it a gold seal of approval, so we're good. Like, yeah, they gave it 40 years ago. Things have changed slightly since then. So, crypto mod started, I'd say its inception was in the late 1990s. NSA had done some studies. They were looking at, the algorithms and the key exchanges that were, in place to protect our information. As a result of those studies, they identified what was called the Priority 9. And if you're old school, you may know this already, but there's things like the STU and all this old legacy equipment. And at that time, it was like, this is the Priority 9. The services all provided seed money to NSA to develop replacements for those products, and we went down a path. Well, that's kind of the same flawed approach that we had with key management, right? Because the impression was, well, if you replace those, then we're done. But it's actually an evolving, if you think of it as a technology insertion, so every 3 to 5 years, you got to go back and retouch things, right? So, as we proceed down this path of crypto modernization, we're looking, initially they were looking at a replace, modernize, and transform were the phases. That's kind of, somewhat gone by the wayside, but I'd say that we're in the transformation stage currently. And so we started acknowledging that our legacy devices need to be replaced with the initial Priority 9. But since then, we've evolved, and we have things like the ACC program, the Advanced Cryptographic Capability Program, which we'll talk a little bit about later. And then we have CM2, which is looming, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in future slides. But essentially, we're at that transformational stage where we're really beginning to see radical change in our future capability development. meaning that the current inventory is not going to support those future programs, so it's going to drive a wholesale replacement of pretty much everything that we have currently fielded. As you can see, the items affected, all our C5 ISR, weapon systems, and IT, so all the things that we're currently using, because the processing and memory capability that resides in our current inventory is not going to support the extended key lengths and the algorithms that are going to be required in the future. So, if you're familiar with the encryptors, this bullet just talks about all of our various families. You got the LEF, so that's like the KIV7M is a link encryptor. We're pretty much transitioning away from link encryption or point-to-point and going to INEs or your HAPI devices, which can support multiple connections. We're also looking at typically you think of encryption at HAPI devices at layer 3. While we're developing layer 2 capabilities or Ethernet data encryption, so you're going to see some vast improvement in speed and throughput. When we transition the backbone to layer 2 capability. Vincent A and DVT, I know that's a mouthful. Advanced narrowband digital voice terminals. So that's your KY99, KY100, KY57, 58, and KYV5. Those are all being modernized by the Air Force. The intent is to retain the existing form factor. So it's a plug and play, but as you know, nothing is truly plug and play. So we have challenges with that. But the intent is that if you have an airframe, you're just going to be able to pull out your KY99 and replace it with a KY99M and keep driving on. Secure voice, key management, and tactile radios. Tactile radio is a big one. We'll talk a little bit about that later. So actions to take. Upgrade and replace the legacy or existing devices, with modern devices prior to the last year of use for the algorithm that's identified, and there's one Chief of Staff notice that I mentioned. And unfortunately, you can't see the very bottom there, but our near-term priorities that we're working are Link 16, IFF, tactile radios, and the advanced capability. Advanced cryptographic capability programs, those are our 4 priority efforts currently. So we're working with all the programs to develop OAMs on how we're going to get well and get after those, modernizing those capabilities. Tactical radios, for instance, that's actually being worked through the Army G357 Mission Command Forum. So, between General Crawford and General Flynn, I believe, and the G3 actual, they're the co-chairs for that forum. So TICM, Tactical Radio, is developing that modernization strategy and presenting it within that forum, and we'll get after how we're going to go about modernizing all those various radios. Okay, so what are some of the drivers just in general terms? Obviously we talked about Moore's Law, so as things advance, the computing power or capability increases, and the adversary's capabilities also increase. So we got to look at we have if you monitor the news, there's been some incidents with some of the programs I mentioned that we've got some real threats out there. So that's and reduce cryptographic life cycles. Meaning, that KGXYZ was certified 20 years ago. It may no longer provide the protection that you require, to protect the data that's being transmitted on that particular network. Okay, so we talked about ACC briefly, and we'll talk a little bit more in detail about it. The technology obsolescence is another one. Some of the components that are being used in some of our current or existing inventory, have become obsolete. They're difficult to get repair parts, etc. And one example of technology obsolescence is if you're familiar with Talon. The initial Talon card was a PCM CIA form factor. Well, who's got those anymore? As technology advances, we're being forced to kind of modernize and keep pace. Another phenomenon that we're seeing with modern crypto devices is the advent of various features that are not cryptographically related. So the vendors have identified ways to segment their market by offering different feature sets. And one is VLAN, for instance. They offer VLAN as a licensed feature in some of the products. Some others are Ethernet data encryption, for instance. So you can have an encryptor that could work at layer 2 or layer 3. That would be an additional licensed feature. And there's also throughput licensing capability. So you could buy a modern encryptor and have it throttled back to 100 meg, or you could pay and have the 1 gig license. So we're seeing this phenomenon where you can this one box can do a myriad of things. That creates challenges for our log folks because they have to account for various things by capability. So it's simple, like if I'm missing a screwdriver from my toolkit and I go to the supply system and say I need this screwdriver, then you're going to get this flat tip screwdriver. But what if you have a KGXYZ that has a VLAN license and instead of 100 meg, it's a 1 gig? But it's all the same NSN and serial number. So how do so that creates issues for our logisticians. So what we've attempted to do is baseline the products at a certain configuration, and then if you need to deviate from that baseline, there's ways that there's things we put in place to allow you to do that, so that when that device goes down and you return it, you're just getting a base vanilla box, and then we'll apply the licenses afterwards. Okay. All right. Driving factors to modernize. So, we've got to get the latest and greatest out to the warfighter. So, the newest technologies that are becoming available, and certified by NSA, we've got to get those, and we've got to get our aging inventory out. Existing systems, they don't meet, some of the growth and expansion on the network that we're seeing. So we're working with the ACOMs, ASCCs, and DRUs to make sure that we identify those and we get those removed from the inventory as quickly as possible. And as we go through this process, we also have to ensure that they're getting their replacement devices prior to pulling their existing device out of the network. So that's a bit of a change from the way the traditional logistics system works as well. We can't afford to have them go down while they're waiting for that replacement. Okay, and then I just listed crypto mod means different things to the different communities of interest that participate. So from G3, G3 looks at things from a requirements authorization type perspective. G6 looks at it from an IA cybersecurity. Is it approved by NSA? Does it have a safety confirmation? And does it actually meet the technical need? Because oftentimes, a customer organization is going to come in and they're not requesting a capability; they're requesting a specific device, right? But if you need a 1 gig encryptor, the device you're requesting may not be necessarily the right fit. So we'll look at that with C5ISR to make sure that what you're actually asking for meets your need and that it will fulfill your requirement. The ASALT, G8, obviously there are resource folks. So we work closely with the system synchronization officer you know, to ensure that we get our palm building correctly and we can defend it. At ASALT, you know, obviously that's our acquisition program as well as our Department of the Army Systems Coordinator. So between the you know, the G8 SSO and the DASC within ASALT, you know, that's kind of a partnership that we work with to ensure that the program moves forward, you know, from a funding perspective. You know, we work with Cyber COE and the capability developer, you know, primarily with TICM Network and Services to make sure that, you know, the .mil PF analysis is done. In fact, we're working a analysis of alternatives right now for CryptoMod 2 to make sure that we've identified all those gaps as we move forward and we get those capabilities identified so that that PLNet-E can start pursuing material solutions to fill those gaps. And finally, C5ISR, you know, they do all of our kind of our exploration as far as emerging technologies, but they also do evaluations of crypto. And this is something that's, you know, most folks don't realize. You know, NSA, you know, certifies our crypto devices. Yes, true statement. However, you know, every software build and every hardware, you know, form factor that gets certified, we ship to C5ISR, and we have them, you know, put it through the paces. You know, NSA is looking at it from their perspective, meaning, you know, you got ComSec key, you got an algorithm, they work together, they protect the information, and they believe that, you know, based on their analysis, that it's going to protect it for the intelligence life that's required. They don't necessarily look at it operationally. So C5ISR takes all that and they put it into, you know, operational type networks, you know, in their lab environment, and they put it through the paces, and we find something with every single, you know, software hardware build, which is a good thing. And then we work with NSA to funnel that information back to the vendor to get those vulnerabilities for you know, those fixes applied so that we have a product that works. And a dated example of that is with the Steve. We had Steve 2.6 software come out back, you know, years ago when things were hot and heavy in the CENTCOM AOR. At that time, we weren't looking at all these software builds. Shipped the software out, upgraded all the Steves, and shut down the whole network because the compression algorithm was quit. You know? So that's a big problem. So now we test everything and make sure that everything's working, you know, before we authorize it for use on the network. I'm doing time, Steve. Good? Okay. What is ACC? So the Advanced Cryptographic Capability Program, I've talked about it several times. That's a program led by NSA, and it upgrades the asymmetric algorithms, providing confidentiality. So it's shoring up, you know, our confidentiality service, you know, and it applies to I think 13 devices, right? So within the program, they're doing waves. So the first wave will be this year, and then next year, and then the following year. And we have very short windows to do those software upgrades, but they're user upgrades, and they're getting after, you know, some threats that NSA has identified. JITIC is the test lab that's working with NSA, but we also, we Army and C5ISR participate in the ACC test and evaluation whippets to make sure that we're tracking all those efforts and that we get the software builds. In fact, I think we've got 2 software builds right now in the lab that are being put through their paces to make sure that they work before we send them out for fielding. Why do I mention it? Because we have an XORD that we're fixing to publish that covers the ACC upgrades because they're going to be mandatory upgrades. So anybody remember KIV7M mandatory software upgrade that happened, you know, some years ago? It was a fiasco. Why was it a fiasco? Because, you know, we know that we had, I'll pick a number, like 30,000 KIV7Ms, but we had no means of tracking when those software updates were done. And NSA wanted to know by serial number when those software updates are done. So we've got an XORD for ACC. We're going to look at those families of devices, and we're going to use the maintenance advisory message process that our logisticians are familiar with. You know, so if you have a mandatory something that you need to do to your tank, you know, in the maintenance system, they can force that. So we're going to use the maintenance system to force folks to report that yes, they completed their software update for ACC. And the big takeaway here is, I mentioned 13 devices or so that's getting the ACC update. Everything that's not, we're going to have to replace. So, we can go into details in that in another forum. But so we're actively working with NSA, JITIC, and as well as the other services to make sure that we're tracking this effort, and we got a plan in place to make sure that those upgrades get done. So without going into detail on what specific devices are, it affects some of our secure voice products, our INEs, and our link encryptors. And we can talk later about, if you have any specific questions about that. Okay, so we're working again with the ACOMs, AFCEAs, DRUs to put a plan in place, to get after this identified, segment of the inventory, so that we'll issue out those the XORD, and then the plan is that so the XORD kind of covers the entire effort, and then each family or each device will have its own maintenance advisor message that follows that, and then because you'll do like 3 devices this year, 5 next year, and so another year after that. So it'll be a phased approach. Okay, CryptoMod 2. So CryptoMod 2 is a follow-on to ACC, and it gets after the remaining problem set that ACC doesn't address. It's going to update our inventory with modern capabilities. So this is the effort that I was referring to that our existing inventory is not going to support. The processing and memory that's in our current devices there may be a few exceptions, but by and large, it's not going to handle the increased key length as well as the algorithm complexity to support moving forward. And PLNet-E has already developed a plan that addresses it in their Palm build to replace our existing inventory. We just have to wait for those products to be developed. Again, the items affected, it's all of our C5ISR, IT, and weapon systems. And it's going to require physical replacement of the vast majority, if not all, of our cryptographic inventory that currently resides in the force today. Okay. Now we're going to transition. So, ComSec, doesn't work without ComSec material, right, or key management. So, KMI is a JROC approved, which is a Joint Requirement Oversight Council. So it's a joint program. NSA is the lead for that program, and it's a follow-on solution, as I mentioned earlier, to the electronic key management system. So the intent there is to provide an automated, network accessible key management capability that delivers key directly to your account via the network by you connecting to what's called the KMI storefront. As the program matures, it will encompass functionality, support key management services, all the way to the civils, allies, and coalition. So, just similar to the EKMS does, there's KMI varieties, if you will, like Centrix varieties. So, different ally partners will have, or coalition partners could potentially procure their own KMI infrastructure from an account perspective to connect when necessary to receive key from us or to generate their own host nation key. First, we have to finish, building out KMI from a U.S. perspective. As I mentioned earlier, and I think my next slide, no, it'll be the next one, I believe. But we'll go over like how many accounts we have, and then what the transition plan actually accomplished and what remains to be done. So here we have if you're familiar with Windows 10 transition that was mandated, we had a very short time frame to do that. The KMI platforms aren't all using Windows 10, and we got an exception from the DoD CIO until March 2021, I believe. To complete that transition, The exception there is that there are some Navy accounts, I believe 31, that are afloat. So obviously, it's just like, with Army forces that are in contact, if you're in the box, you're not going to make any changes to your configurations until you return. While the Navy has very long lead times in order to effect those changes. So, we went through and we requested, an extension in order to complete our Windows 10 implementation on our KMI accounts, and we were granted that until March of 2021. So here it breaks down, our KMI account status. So on the active component, you can see we have 245 accounts. We've got 116 in the guard and 27 on the reserve side of the house for a total of 388. Again, this gives an impression that we're done with KMI because we've transitioned all these accounts to, KMI MGCs, right? However, that just means we replace the computer that resides in the account. The infrastructure is a work in progress, and it's going to take a very long time to transition, tier 0, tier 1, over to an actual KMI infrastructure. We're working closely with NSA, DoD CIO oversight to make sure that transition happens. And, if there are any questions, I'll be glad to field questions because I think my KMI expert is here in the room. She better be. I see you, Tracy. You're not hiding. So, but again, this is just KMI is an attempt to, it's a program that will automate a lot of the features that the account managers have to do, I use the term manually with the traditional system. So, and this is just the memo that was signed by the DoD CIO that provided the instruction and the guidance and authorized us to continue our Windows 10 until 2021. Okay, so our current baseline is Spiral 2 Spin 2, which, that's acquisition jargon for, incremental delivery of capability, right? So, the foot stomp here is, if you look at the bottom, we've had some issues with KMI training. So as we transition from EKMS to KMI, we transition the institutional course from an EKMS course to a KMI course. And some of the conditions or the requirements, I should say, for KMI account managers have changed. So with that change, with the change in what the requirements are, as well as the churn rate or the turbulence with personnel moves, it's become a challenge for us to maintain authorized, certified people in these accounts. So there was an Army audit agency audit conducted that identified some of the shortcomings and deficiencies. So we've been working with the Cyber Center of Excellence in the schoolhouse to, one, transition ComSec responsibilities from 25 Delta to 25 Bravo. That's going to happen in the very near future. What's the date? 20? Something like that. But that's actually in the works. We've also the effort that I mentioned with the policy between the G2 and the G6 was one of the areas that was mentioned. There was some confusion about who's responsible for what. So that's why we're working with the G2 to make sure that we clearly define componency and the roles and responsibilities for ComSec policy from a headquarters perspective. So, what are your questions?
Sir,
Yeah.
Bill Real from the Lead Department of Reserve Center. How are the systems made up? Who gets what when?
Okay, so I'm going to attempt to repeat the questions since they're recording it. So, the question is, how are decisions made as far as who gets what when? So, there's two answers, two parts to that equation. So one is, if it's an acquisition program and they're fielding a system, right, then that program has a fielding schedule associated with it, and the encryptors, if things are going as they're supposed to go, that PM is doing a data interchange with PLNetE that provides the ComSec, and then PLNetE is providing, those encryptors, per the fielding schedule, with enough lead time to get integrated, and then that PM fields that capability as a package in accordance with the fielding schedule that's blessed off on, the patch chart that they get from 388. The other piece of it is slightly more challenging to answer. That's when organizations submit their requirements through the ISSP. So you log onto the application and you submit your requirement for 2 kg 175 Golfs or 2 kg 250 XSs, right? Trying to spread it out a little bit so we're not doing favorite, right? So those get staffed by the 3, the 6, and the 8. We review the requests. We look at what your authorizations are. If it's above authorization, then you have to go through a 4610R process, which goes to a board at the headquarters, all that stuff. I know, guys are rolling back. Yeah. Yep. So all those things are taken into consideration. And also, when you're getting ready to deploy, it's usually done with an ONS, a G1s, or a request for expedited delivery. And then, so we try to expedite those requests. So all those are taken into consideration, and there are ways for us to fast track requests and get through the equipment. I mean, if we can't get it out of the Tobyhanna quickly enough, NSA has the ComSec utility program where you can go in and buy it and have it shipped out, within an hour, 24 hours or so. So there are ways of filling those, those real world, we really need this capability now. The reason I say it's a bit more challenging to answer that question is because as we go through the network modernization efforts, and I'll give you for instance, this is doing a super access migration. So as we go through that effort, there are some installations that weren't covered under the equipment that this is issuing. So we get requests for PAC-0, for instance, may require 200, I'll make a number up, 279 KDXYZs. Okay, they need them this year. Well, this is a year of execution, so there's no new money for this year. That's an unprogrammed requirement. So now it becomes a UFER. So we have to work with the 8 to see, okay, or then we have to sit down with you and say, look, I can't give you 279. I may be able to give you 40, and then we'll pace out 20 a month. We'll have to work to see what's in the realm of the possible, because especially when you get to the high end encryptors, we're starting to see the demands for the 10 gig, 100 gig. Those get very pricey. So when you're talking encryptors that cost $70,000 a pop, and you want 20 of them. So it's a case by case evaluation of when is the real need. Because we've all been around, so I'm just going to say it. Everybody needs their justification, and they need it now. That's not reality, right? So oftentimes, you might need a couple now, and a couple later, and a couple after that. But in your request, you need 150 of them tomorrow. So, answer your question, hopefully. Okay. Sure. Okay. That is an excellent question, and I'm glad you asked it because I think I mentioned CSFC earlier and I never followed up. So, commercial solutions for classified. Familiar with it? All right. So I'm going to give the NSA example that I don't really. I'll leave it at that. Swiss cheese, right? If you take it and you cover all the holes. So what is CSFC? CSFC is a composable solution that's made up of commercial solutions. So you can buy a variety of commercial solutions that's on NSA's list of solutions within that particular capability package. And essentially what it is, you're doubling everything. So you have a double VPN tunnel, you have a double firewall, you have a double intrusion detection. And if you implement those capabilities in accordance with NSA's instructions and their capability packages, then that can afford you the protection up to whatever level NSA authorizes, okay? Or NSA approved, I should say. NSA does not certify CSFC solutions. They approve them, and then the risk acceptance is on the authorizing official as to whether or not they want to use a CSFC solution compared to a traditional Suite A or Type 1 solution. So in the Army, what we've done is we've got one of our service labs, C5ISR, as a trusted integrator. So when you approach NSA about a CSFC solution, they're going to give you a list of these are all the vendors we work with. I think there's 2 government labs, SPAWAR, LAMP maybe, and there we go. Thank you. And C5ISR. And the intent when we pursued that was so that when Army customers approach NSA, they would be redirected to C5ISR for that trusted integrator service. So to more succinctly answer your question, we do have, like Southcom has a large CSFC capability instance, and we're starting to see a lot more interest in what the capability provides. However, you have to do the total life cycle cost analysis to see, because with CSFC solutions, they have to be re-registered every year. You have to have somebody continuously doing configuration management when there's software or hardware changes. So you really have to look at, if it's a small scale implementation, it may not be cost effective. If it's a larger scale implementation, then you may get a better bang for your buck, because of the continual cost associated with maintaining. Yes? Good.
You mentioned the CM2 was undergoing an AOA. Can you give some indication of implementation schedule within the Army of CM2?
Let me think about how to answer that. So, what I can say is that we've retained a team to do an analysis of alternatives. The capability-based assessment report was just submitted or released in CADMS by the DoD CIO. So let me back up. There was a capability-based assessment effort that was ongoing with NSA, and DoD CIO was the tester or study director, right? So NSA finally completed the report and released it to DoD CIO. It's up to the DoD CIO to release the report, because it's their effort. Last week, DoD CIO released the report through CADMS for staffing to get input. When that document finishes staffing, which I'm not sure when the suspense is, that's going to inform the update to NSA's initial capabilities document. NSA is looking to publish that document in November as a final product. Okay, and then between the report and the ICD will inform the update to our capability development document. So I would say, best guess, probably summer 2020. I don't know, but I have my Tickum guy here. Rob?
I would say probably fall. Fall 20.
And that's just a rough estimate, because the delivery of these documents has slipped. We were supposed to get the report months ago. So I'm not sure if I gave you a good enough answer, but it's kind of jello right now. Other questions? Before I forget, one thing I did want to point out: if you're trying to get CPEs, make sure you scan your badge before you leave. Have to stand in the back. So, questions? I think our time's up, but I'll stand here and talk as long as you want. Go ahead.
All right. I need to say I'm listening. I noticed that you had 3 5